Very good evening and a very pleasant welcome to Shunali, Jaya, Shyamasri from us from the VTU family. We are very delighted to have three great minds together to have deliberations on finance and fintech. Over to you, Shumaisa, the moderator of today's session. You can carry it.
Yes, ma'am. A warm afternoon to all our eminent panelists. I feel very honored to have you here with us today for our event, Careers in Finance and Fintech. Hello, everyone. I am Shumaisa Sheikh Surab of VTU Belgavi, pursuing my MBA in Finance and Human Resources. I am very excited to introduce our panel members for the day. Our first panelist is Jaya Janardanan. Jaya has been a banker for 25 years and has worked with multiple large banks like ICICI Bank, ING Visya, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. She is currently the Chief Operating Officer with an upcoming NBFC, Indostar Capital. She is experienced in setting up operations, technology, customer service, and digital banking. She is a winner of the Asian Banker for the Best Bank Technology in 2012. Our next panelist is Shunali Nagarkatti. Shunali is the head corporate finance of mergers and acquisitions and new projects at Flamingo International. She has also formerly been a part of the corporate finance at Ernst and Young and ANZ Investment Bank. Shunali has a wide experience in the field of investment banking. I'm very excited to introduce to you our next panel member who has joined us from Singapore, Shyamasri Das Sharma. Shyamasri is the Chief Venture Partner at Sustainability and Impact Fund. Shyamasri is is a senior banking professional with extensive experience in leading multinational banks across structured transactions, product management, credit risk management, and regulatory oversight. She is based out of Singapore and has had regional roles working in all key Asian banks. She has a keen interest in the digital banking space, and during her tenure at Deutsche Bank had been a major global co-creation project with IBM to develop a blockchain-based KYC platform. She has a passion for the impact space and harnessing the power of technology to improve the delivery of financial services, primarily to the unbanked and underbanked sections of the society. I extend a warm welcome to all our panel members. Before we get yes, yes, ma'am. Before we get started, we want all our wonderful audience to get involved. We will have the podium open for Q&A round at the end of the session. So please pour your questions throughout the live event. Hi, Jaya. You have a very impressive career in journey in fintech. Fintech is in modern banking solutions. Thousands of young freshers are looking forward to make a career in fintech. How has fintech changed banking careers and jobs?
Thank you, Sumaya, for this wonderful introduction and this opportunity. And thank you to VTU for bringing such brilliant minds on the table to kind of make sure that we share our our experiences, our interest to the students of VTU. I would like to actually speak about a consumer in this sphere. See, as a consumer, there's always a demand. Okay, so when you go to a shop to buy something, you actually want to look at a high quality product, but you also have the other thing in the back of your mind. This is going to be expensive. How do I make it? How do I get something which is a high value but with a low cost? Banking is actually reaching that stage. Okay, gone are the days when you had these four or five large banks of the public sector banks which would offer their product and services, and you had to take it as a consumer. But today the world is changing. It's actually the consumers that is driving the financial services. It's consumers who are saying what they want. It's consumers who are saying why would they want to stay with one financial service company or leave and go or join some, and go to and take a product of some other financial services company. So if you look at the underlying mindset of a consumer, he wants the best, okay, but he wants to do it at a low cost. Now the market is actually, let's say the market is a space of 100 square feet. There are many players who are trying to game for that 100 square feet, but the best can survive, and the those who are not able to kind of manage the consumer demands and the needs of the consumer will not survive. So how do you survive in a so much of a consumer driven market, right? uh, you have an account with a particular bank, you will leave the bank if you don't like the services. You will want to continue in the bank if you like the services. You will tell 10 people that, go to this bank and open an account because the services are good. Now, if I as a financial service offer, I mean, someone who has to offer you financial services, I have to make sure that my cost of producing those services are very, very low. It has to be at a very, very reduced cost. Now, cost reduction has to be a combination of a lot of factors, right? It also depends upon where you're located, what are you producing, what are your raw material costs. This is all production. Similarly, in a financial industry, also, you have lot of stuff, a lot of things that go into producing a service or a product for a consumer. For example, if you want to go and take a loan, right? When you go to two organizations or two financial services company and say, I want a loan, home loan, what will you look at? You look at the interest rate of what is being offered to you. So when you say that one financial services NBFC, the interest rate is 10%, and the other interest rate is 8%, you will go to somebody who's giving you 8% interest rate, right? Because that's your critical, that's where you will put your mindset to. Now, as a someone who's actually working on this at the background, we have a lot of factors to see how do you reduce cost of producing something. Now, when we look at the cost, the one of the stuff that has come in a lot of handy in the current scenario is technology. So technology has become a big boon to bringing down cost of production of a financial services. Okay, so typically when you talk about fintech, it's actually financial services offering the technology piece that is being used for delivering financial services. That's why it's called fintech. Okay, that's where the combination of fintech has come in. Now, the reason why the when we hear about jobs changing, it's basically the old story of making things manually available to a consumer is now getting more and more digital. If you use technology, technology reduces the cost of production of a services. Now, if I have to give you a very a clear example of how we look at fintech in banking, just to give you a very example where you can relate to it. How have you seen a call center? A call center means there are a lot of people in the call center who call up and talk to customers, talk to if you have an issue, you call up the call center. You have people who are answering your questions. That's a traditional model. Now, the way when the volume of services increase, there needs to be you can't keep on increasing people in the system, right? It increases your cost of service. So how do you bring down the cost? If all of you have heard of the concept of bot, right? It's a robotic piece that has come into vogue right now. So if you today, most of the calls that come from the call center are not really driven by people. They're driven by robotic calls. They're auto calls that are driven, which talks about a lot of, they talk to the user like a consumer, like the call center lady. They talk to you about what do you want, how do they serve you, and you will never find the difference. And that's where technology has come in to make sure that you give the experience to the user like a personalized service. But the piece behind that is technology. So that's how the way the roles and the jobs in banks are changing in a large way. So we use a lot of data. There's a lot of information of the user that is there. We analyze the user behavior. We understand what the consumer wants, and this churning of information is all done through technology. And then the organizations, the financial services go forward and say, okay, I've seen that you have used all these services. Are you interested in something else? And that's how the technology is helping to take a step more and further towards enhancing a customer experience. Now, when you come to jobs, okay, so see, we have seen how world has been changing for the last so many years, and this pandemic has taught us a lot of stuff when it came to on the job front. We have learned, when it was not a consumer, it was not a computer age, and when computer got introduced, people thought that they would lose their jobs, but nobody lost their jobs because there was something else created for people to start working on. So fintech is not here, or fintech does not actually, fintech actually enhances one's skills to learn to the go to the next level to understand and enhance one's understanding and increase one's capabilities to do the next level of job. So when if you look at a banking scenario, when you talk about jobs, there are two parts of the jobs. One is people who develop and people who actually consume the services. Now, the people who consume the services of the technology actually uses it to make sure that they deliver the services to the consumer. And the technology people, the people who develop it, actually takes the inputs from the users and say, okay, this is what the consumer wants. Okay, let's start working on it and delivering it to the consumer in the way he wants it. So typically, the way the transition from the manual mode to a computer mode to a digital mode is actually taking the same path in terms of a change. And I think we as users of technology, we as you people who drive technology, has realized it that everything and anything that happens is only as a boon and not something that is taking us away from reality. Life is only going to get better, and in the years going by, you don't know what more can come in. But I think the way we are in and the way the generation which we are in, I think this is the best thing that could happen to us in terms of the way digital has shaped our lives. So that's something that I thought I could share over here.
What an inspiring journey that was, Jaya. I'm sure all the students are inspired already. Shunali, now coming to you, for the young aspirants seeking a career in investment banking, what is the career progression is like? I'm sorry, the moderator of ours has some internet connectivity problems. I'll take it over.
Sure.
Shunali, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Doctor. Essentially, there's this myth that we deal with, and that the perception is that typically, MBA graduates and people from only finance backgrounds can get into investment banking. But I would kind of dispute that, because of course, I have been a chartered accountant, not an MBA. I have had colleagues from other backgrounds like science and a law, etc., taking on fully well to the investment banking career. Now, in terms of what you really need is, yes, a bit of accounting knowledge does help, and one could do financial acumen and some business acumen and a fair amount of analytical mind. But and you end up learning a lot on the job. In terms of skill sets and the progression, what typically happens is that when as in any other career, you start, when you start at the junior level, you end up doing a lot of execution work, which entails a lot of things around research, because you're researching companies, you're researching businesses, you're researching the industry that the companies are part of. You do a lot of benchmarking analysis. When you try and understand the financial health of the company, you try and understand the future, what the company holds in terms of the performance. One ends up doing a lot of analysis of the financial accounts, projections in terms of where the company is headed, where the business is headed. So a lot of that work goes into investment banking, which essentially is mergers and acquisitions and capital raising. And also a lot of when you're meeting clients, you do a lot of pitching work. So computer skills in terms of Excel skills, in terms of PowerPoint presentations, making all of that obviously comes in handy. But in terms of progression, what happens is that yes, you do a lot of execution work and a lot of support that you support your team in deal making and assisting clients. And depending if you're on the corporate side, then of course your senior, your finance team. And as you sort of start moving up the ladder and gradually move up, then your skill sets, you start evolving as a professional and as a banker. And what really then starts, what you then start to need honing on is your the relationship skills, because it's a lot to do with relationship building with your clients. And when I say clients, you're essentially dealing with the senior management. So it's very important to be able to connect with the senior management, because you're part of their strategic making, decision making. One also needs to connect with the investor community. So one needs to understand how private equity funds, debt funds, the capital markets work. So and eventually you start looking at yourself as originating deals and ideas rather than just execution, because you've done all of that at the grassroots level. And then you manage a team to actually be able to entirely handle the deal from inception state to the closing stage. So that's really what happens typically in investment banking. And of course, I mean, there are lots of lateral moves that happens. I mean, there are professionals who work from the advisory side to the corporate side. So they kind of leverage on their skills and assist corporates in their internal corporate finance functions. It could happen the other way around as well. The investment professionals from the corporates could move to consulting, to a consulting sort of environment. So lateral moves keep happening, but I think it's all about getting yourself around the businesses, the numbers, getting a grip around where the business is headed, trying to assist the management in whether it's a strategic decision regarding raising capital, hiving off any businesses, acquiring any businesses. So typically that's really what it is. I hope I've kind of answered the question to the extent possible.
Thank you so much, Shunali. It was great insight that you have given. And now probably Shyamasri could add a few more insights into it. How do you think the global pandemic COVID-19 has impacted the careers? And what do you think that it can be turned into an opportunity for our students?
Thank you, Dr. Deepthi. First of all, I would like to congratulate VTU for having started this wonderful Women's Study Center. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I think you're doing a fantastic job of having organized this webinar and the symposium, and thank you for inviting me. Now, as it comes to COVID, I think we are all aware of some of the very serious impact it's had on careers all across the globe, not just in India. And I mean, the obvious impact has been highest in retail, hospitality, entertainment, sports, industries, etc., airlines, where obviously the large-scale retrenchments have happened. In India, we also saw factories and construction sites being badly affected during the very strict lockdown. And we have all been assailed by basically visuals of hundreds of thousands of migrant laborers going back to their villages. Now, there was a study by McKinsey in July, which actually they studied US and India specifically on the impact on careers. And for India, they said, especially for women, there was some, this is more about the women-centered study. What they said was women comprised about 20% of the formal workforce in India, but the retrenchments were actually 23%. So obviously women have been impacted higher, and that's probably one of the reasons, obviously, is because women are disproportionately employed in industries which have been impacted the most by the pandemic. So while it's been difficult for everyone across both men and women, but I think women have been impacted a little more than men. The other thing that we saw as a result of pandemic affecting careers obviously has been that the delicate work-life balance that most professionals have has been disrupted very badly. Kids have started having online classes from home. Everybody's fighting for the same computer. And then especially I've had friends who had 3 kids and 2 computers, desktops, and this perpetual jostling for internet space. Then household helps were not coming, so people ended up doing all the housework. So it was a double burden, and this impacted everyone physically, mentally, psychologically. Now, hopefully, with things turning around, now the vaccine is out, and obviously the infection levels have fallen across in India, especially. There's been some significant fall off. So life is coming back to normal. Hopefully, that will bring things back essentially to a little more what it was in pre-COVID era. But I do believe that some things will change significantly going forward and permanently. One of the things being obviously COVID, I think showed us that working from home is not only possible, it's also equally productive in many cases. And therefore, I think working from home, for example, is likely to stay as a permanent feature for a lot of people, if not every day, at least a few days a week, or probably some hours, etc. Some jobs probably will actually have a larger proportion of working from home. So that actually is an advantage in some ways, especially for women, because I think women will have a better edge in getting jobs where basically working from home is allowed, etc. The other thing I think in terms of impact on careers, I think there would be a whole lot of new jobs coming up, because if pandemic has done anything, it has actually accelerated the digital push, which was already happening across the economy in most sectors of the economy. But I think it has got accelerated a lot more in the last few months. And there will be a whole lot of new job opportunities coming up in various sectors: online education, health tech, e-commerce. So even travel industry, to a certain extent, though travel is probably going to be the last industry to come into effect after the pandemic reduces. But so essentially, there will be a whole lot of new jobs coming up, new opportunities coming up, new roles up, and I think that's something that young people entering the job force today should take the most advantage of. Especially because I think there was one study I read that the young people in their 20s and people in their 50s have been retrenched the most, globally as well as in India. So a lot of young people who have probably been retrenched and haven't got back to their jobs, etc., can seriously look at job changes or career changes, of moving into different industries, etc. Example I can give is in Singapore, for example. The Singapore government is actively supporting a lot of people to basically rebuild new skills in new industries, essentially, and they're giving subsidies for reskilling and basically undertaking various courses. So there are various case studies I see in Singapore where people have moved, pilots who have turned into basically online education or something, or even air hostesses, or some other, like even hospitality industry, restaurants, etc. Bars are still closed, so a lot of bartenders, etc., have actually moved into different industries in e-commerce. So that will probably happen essentially, and that's now whether it's good, bad, better, we'll have to see. But it's not as if opportunities will go. As Jaya mentioned, fintech industry also, I think the technology doesn't necessarily reduce jobs, it probably brings about more opportunities. Let's look at this pandemic as an opportunity to change things for the better, and hopefully that's the way things will turn out.
Thank you, Shyamasri, for sharing your vital thoughts on this topic. And probably there's a lot take home for the youngsters from the Minds Like You. Jaya, the question to you, what in your opinion is fintech, whether it's a job creator or a destroyer? Jaya, you're on mute.
This is a very interesting question, Dr. Dipti, because every time a change has happened in the world, we always talk about, is this going to help us or is it going to be is going to work in the reverse side for us? And I hear this coming time and again with respect to the fintech piece also. So I just go back to a few years back when, when people did not know computer, people did not have computer. People said, oh, here comes computer and we lose jobs, but I don't think anybody lost jobs. Uh, then came the era of mobile, right? So people said, "Oh God, this mobile will take away all the landline." Landline still continues to be a critical part of everybody's life. So every time there is a change, there is this mindset which keeps, wobbling, saying that, "Oh, is somebody going to lose something?" According to me, the fintech has been one of the greatest boon that we at this era of ours has witnessed. And what we see today, sitting at home doing internet shopping, doing your online shopping, doing e-commerce, and how during pandemic, how did we actually manage to work out of home? It's all because of fintech. So I don't see as a fintech being a job destroyer. Okay, now coming to a creator versus a destroyer, it has a very significant. See, every time we know that if you don't enhance yourself when there is a change, you are bound to be left behind. So if you, and the one thing that actually and not, it's not because we are speaking from AFH, I'm kind of making this statement, but I think when March 8th, when Madhura set up this AFH, I think there was some way we were realizing that building skills for an individual is very critical. And just with a mere graduation, it's not okay. When they come step out into the world, there is a lot of other stuff that they need to know. And that's when we said that yes, we have to do something on the skilling piece. The job, when you talk about fintech development, and those weird things keep coming into everybody's mind, saying that people lose jobs. I think one thing that we need to understand is we need to actually and it happens in every case, if you don't move with the change, you are lost. You actually are away, you will actually lose. So you need to move with change, and therefore one needs to get ourselves highly skilled when there is a change happening and be aligned to it. And I think in fintech it's more so, because if you are not there and if you don't align your skills to what is happening, you actually are bound to call it as a job loss. Okay, because you are not got yourself. So fintech does not do a job, is not something that is a destroyer of a job. We ourselves are a destroyer of our jobs if we don't find ourselves skilled. So that is why when we talk about, when we speak also, when we speak to colleges, we speak to, the principals, we speak to students, we say that, you have a graduation degree, you do it. But what is required for the organization is skill required to do that particular job. And that's the way I see even in fintech. Okay. Uh, if you go to an organization which is completely tech driven, okay, and if you don't understand and know and get yourself equipped for that basic stuff to do in their organization, you're ultimately out of the race. So that's where I see is basically you have to be self driven, you have to align yourself, you have to make sure that in this organization this is what is required, this is what they have it, this is what I should skill myself, and then get yourself prepared to get into that fold. Otherwise, you're lost. I mean, that happens anywhere. It's not just fintech, it's anywhere. If you're not skilled to actually do a job that you are planning to go to, you are not there. So, according to me, fintech, that question itself saying that, is it a destroyer or a job creator itself does not exist, because you have to live in this world where fintech is driving everything, and therefore you need to be you need to yourself skill. So it's a change, and if you don't move with the change, you're not there. So all students should understand that you can't take a step back. You have to take a step ahead and be aligned to what is happening in the industry and be part of the change. So, that's from me, Dr. Dipti, on this question.
Yes. So the students have to be abreast with the technology, and they have
Absolutely.
to move with in line with what the industry needs. That's wonderful, Jaya. That's really nice. Shunali, you have already expressed your view as to how the career progression is for the students.
Right.
Now, every finance student's dream is could be an investment banker. So,
Right.
could you also share your journey as an investment banker, and what tips would you give to the youngsters and youth of today?
Right. So, Dr. Deep, I'll just step back a little bit and just quickly sort of, explain what investment banking typically is. And it's because that will throw up in terms of, what kind of opportunities it really throws up. What is investment banking? It's essentially it's creation of new capital, or it is transfer of existing capital. So when I say creation of new capital, you could have someone on one side raising capital and on the other side deploying the capital. Now, the entity that is raising capital is typically a corporate, and it could be raising capital by way of something called equity or debt, or be various other instruments. I don't need to get into that at this point. And the entity that is deploying capital are essentially, funds which could be equity funds, they could be debt funds, also banks in terms of debt capital. And then when I transfer capital, it could also be, a corporate buying into another corporate. So it's existing capital, existing equity being bought or sold by one corporate to the other. And actually, to stitch this up together, you also have the consulting and the advisory piece, where one could be a part of the consulting environment or advisory environment, where you're stitching the deals, or you're getting the buyer and the seller together, or you're getting the entity raising capital or the entity deploying capital together. So this essentially, broadly makes up the, and of course, one more thing is raising equity could also mean capital markets, where it's public equity and the corporates are tapping the public markets to raise equity. Now, it's in terms of my journey, it's been absolutely exciting. There are phases where there's an adrenaline rush because there's a lot happening. Like I mentioned earlier, you are a part of strategic decision making by the company, by the senior management. What kind of capital to raise, at what dilution levels, at what valuation levels. So all of that is these are very pertinent aspects to take into consideration when you're looking to raise capital. Also, it can be very stressful because one is that client management becomes a huge priority. They want things to be done as of yesterday. So timelines, deadlines, you're always racing against time. So there's pressure, no doubt about it. But a lot of learning happens along the way. You develop networking skills, you develop communication skills. It could get frustrating because you would have done all the hard work in terms of trying to stitch the deals together, getting the investor to ready to put in the money, but there is an issue in the external environment. For instance, the equity markets crash, the capital markets crash, the promoter suddenly does not want to raise capital at a lower valuation than what was expected. So a lot of the factors that also in the external environment can cause a lot of frustration. But having said that, one has to just go on relentlessly, as in any other career or any other profession. I think so. Yeah. So it's been a very exciting journey. You do learn a lot, but you have to always try and perform at the next level. And trying to also trying to your financial skills and analytical skills have to be strong. Also putting all that together and being able to connect with the client or with your team, as you go up, sort of move up the value chain, carrying your team together, being, exhibiting leadership skills. So all of that really helps, and all of that kind of has been an exciting part of my journey. Yeah. So like I said, It could be stressful, it could be frustrating, but very exciting because when you actually see, having assisted company, and when you suddenly see your company is listed on the stock exchange because it's you've been a part of it, it's a very, very gratifying feeling. So I think that in a nutshell has been my journey. And you have to keep sort of, sometimes you come to a stage where you have to keep reskilling yourself. There won't be somebody telling you that you got to do this, you got to do that, but you got to keep abreast of the market in terms of what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the global markets, what's happening in the domestic markets in that industry. And I think you have to keep putting that knowledge into your into practice. So that's really been sort of my experience in a nutshell, and what really investment banking is.
Wonderful. Shyamasri, Shunali, your journey as an investment banker is very inspiring, and I'm sure you will be a role model for many of the youngsters today who would take up this as their career. Shyamasri,
Happy.
we've been hearing the whole world talk about blockchain. Every nook and corner talks about blockchain today. What is blockchain, and what scope do you think it has created in modern day banking?
Thanks, Dr. Deepthi. Yeah, there is a lot of hype about blockchain. I think it's reduced a little bit. It was more, I think, 3-4 years back. So what exactly is a blockchain? A blockchain is essentially a decentralized ledger of all transactions across a peer-to-peer network. So blockchain is basically a part of what is called the distributed ledger technology, which essentially allows data or information to be stored across thousands of servers globally. And it lets anyone who's a peer in the network to see everyone else's transactions and entries in almost real time. Now, so that's the basic feature of blockchain. So now that gives it certain characteristics which you would not find in some other technologies which are currently in use. So the fact that the fact that the data is stored in thousands of servers across the globe means that you cannot tamper. It's very difficult to tamper it. It can be changed in very exceptional circumstances, but it needs some significant level of basically mutual consent, which is called the consensus. So essentially, and that obviously means that the data is immutable. Now, the immutability gives it its auditable characteristic. So it's highly auditable, therefore leaves an audit trail of the information that's there, and you can't change it. The other thing is that anybody on the network, as I said, can see everybody else's entries. So that makes it extremely transparent. At the same time, what happens is that while you can see other people's entries, you cannot see the person, the identity behind the peer number. It's basically just a number. It's not a person. It's not a name. So that gives it a level of transparency. At the same time, it ensures privacy and security. So the transparency combined with the security actually builds in a level of trust. So essentially what happens is that blockchain therefore brings in a level of immutability, transparency, trust, and security to a system, which ensures that it's basically something, whenever you need data to be essentially maintained in a very transparent manner for posterity, it is something where blockchain can be used as a technology. And blockchain obviously has a whole lot of use cases, essentially, because it has immense potential for record keeping, obviously, as I mentioned just now, but streamlining a whole lot of systems, processes, etc. Now, coming to finance and what are the use cases, it has a lot of use cases. I mean, most obviously, the one that everybody knows about, whenever they hear of blockchain, they associate it with cryptocurrencies, most notably Bitcoin, which is the most famous cryptocurrency, while there are others, of course. But there are other fairly strong use cases for use of blockchain in the finance industry. For example, settlement of market trades for stocks or bonds, etc. Managing identity and KYC, which is know your customer management. It can be used for streamlining supply chain products in the banking system. It can be used for funds transfers and payments. and it can also be used for digital asset-based financing, etc. So that's in the finance sector. But even outside finance sector, there is actually a lot of use cases for blockchain. And I personally think there are outside financial sector, the use cases of blockchain are better and stronger, because in finance, we have a fair amount of other technology, which can be a reasonably good substitute for blockchain, to be honest. But outside the finance sector, I can give examples of, for example, origin levels, establishing origin labels for food, for let's say fair trade products. Then industries which need IoT devices, essentially have your IoT device-led registry for inventory systems, for assets. Then yesterday, for example, I was just reading that Tata Steel has actually joined the World Economic Forum's Metals and Mining Blockchain Initiative. And under that initiative, they are going to basically assess and monitor their greenhouse gas emission for their core products, right from the mining level up to the final product when they actually sell the steel. So essentially, these are just examples of the various use cases that blockchain can have. Even government, actually blockchain is actually a very good technology for government use. It can be used for voting. It can be used by giving subsidies to citizens, etc. So there are a lot of use cases. Having said that, I personally believe that blockchain as a technology which will get widely adopted is a little far away, because as of now, it is yet to become a low-cost, efficient way of sharing information and data. It has a lot of potential, but we will probably need to see a few more years before we see fairly wide adoption of the technology, especially in finance industry.
Yes, Shyamasri, you have very beautifully simplified the concept around the blockchain for our keen audience out there. Uh, Jaya, coming on to you. Despite the ever-changing technology, how are you able to think out of the box in innovation? And what is your experience to bag one of the renowned Asian Banker Award 2012?
So, when you handle, in terms of a role that I used to do, operations and technology and customer service, one of the key deliverables that I used to have was uh, scale at a reduced cost. So I had to continuously think of ways of managing cost. That was my critical, one of my KRIs that I had to keep in mind all the time. That's number one. Number two, uh, there is always this desire to do something very different, and that's an individual. And I'm sure Neerja also spoke about it in her, the prioritization, the need to think differently. Someone need, as a woman, we have to have some kind of. So I have that kind of a desire. I have to do something very differently, and so these two things kept, it actually puts you into a pressure is to do something very differently. So while technology has been always a core responsibility, and along with operations, I have to be honestly say that I've used it to the best of my knowledge. I mean, I've used it to the best in my working sphere. So whenever you have to work on a reduced cost and at the same time give the best and make a product very efficient, you have to keep thinking out of the box. So the Asian Banker Award was actually for the best bank project, where if I have to actually take you through a process of a bank, when you come to open an account with a bank, what you see in the front is just giving a form. You give a form and you're done with it. You get your account opened, you get your checkbook, you get your debit card, you get your net banking, everything in your hand. But the effort that goes behind it is a huge activity. The physical form has to actually be scrutinized. All the KYC documents has to be scrutinized physically. It has to be entered into your core banking system of the bank. Afterwards, the data has to be sent to the vendor. Your debit card gets processed, your checkbook gets processed. It has to be sent to another vendor who then will dispatch it to your residence. So this is a whole activity that happens there. And there is a multiple legs which happen to the entire process. So what happens is in a market where you're, as I told in the beginning, in a market where you're trying to give the best of the services, one of the things that every bank tries to do is, can I give the customer an account in a few hours time, and not the typical 4 or 5 working days it takes to open an account. In the effort to make sure that how can I give an account to a customer in a matter of few hours is what drove me to this particular project, in terms of if a customer walks in and he gives you your documents, can I open the account in the next 1 hour? And that I worked backward. And then that's what led to building this entire technology piece end to end, where the customer can just walk in. Once I get the document, it gets scanned in the system, it reaches the back office through the scanned image opens the account, and the customer is given a welcome kit across the counter, and there goes the customer being the customer of the bank. So that is where, that project apparently was not done for the sake of getting an award, but that project was done with the sake of using technology to give the best to the customer. But apparently it also happened to be an out of box. It happened to be one of those things that nobody had done in the industry before, and it backed the award. So typically, it was not worked with an intention of getting an award, but it was worked with an intention of giving the best to the customer, but ultimately led to this particular award. So that's so of course. But as a job that you do, and for all these students who are on this particular call, who's hearing this, you have to keep on innovating, not just for the organization, but for yourself also. You have to keep thinking how to do things differently and not traditional. Just to, and this is a very nice piece of story that I would like to share with the audience. And this is what changed my thought process. So when we were taught to think differently, there's a family in Goa who actually used to have a very nice small life. Their son got married. The daughter-in-law came home, and the father-in-law told the daughter-in-law to fry fish. So when she brought the fish fried to the father-in-law, the tail was folded. So she asked the daughter-in-law, "Why is this tail folded?" So she said, "My mom used to fry fish like this." So he said, "I'm quite interested to know why have you folded the tail side? So please call your mother." So the mother said, "I don't know. It's my mom used to do the same way. She used to fold the tail of the fish." So she said, "I would like to talk to your mom." So the grandmother was called on the line. So the grandmother very nicely said, "Oh, that's because my pan was small and the fish was big. So I had to fold it to fit it into the pan." So this is why we say process has to be always thought through and innovated, so that we don't follow something which has been, it has been given to us from generations. You have to think differently. So that's it.
I'm sure, Jaya, that students will pick up the key skills from your journey and inculcate in their life. And this will definitely motivate them to think out of the box. Shunali, over to you now. The job of an investment banker seems very glamorous to all those aspiring to be one. What, in your view, is the most important skill to be an investment banker?
Yeah, so tough one to answer in a very straightjacketed manner, Dr. Dipti, but I would try and answer it to my best, to the best possible extent. I would actually classify the skill sets into two buckets: the professional skills and the soft skills. Professional skills, most of us can sort of either, we already have those strengths, or we build on those strengths, we pick up along the line. And those would be, like I already mentioned, would essentially be, financial and business analytical and financial analytical skills, understanding of balance sheets and profit and loss accounts, and, projections, and sort of PowerPoint skills and Excel skills, and and the list can go on. Your research skills and all of that. But I think at the end of it, also, over and above this, the soft skills that really matter, and I think that would come handy in any that would be across profession and across careers, would be, having a very positive temperament, being able, having the right attitude at work. Because only when you exhibit that attitude of learning and perseverance is when your given more responsibilities to perform, and you end up performing and you kind of sort of shine in what you take up. So I think perseverance also, and then communication skills again, which again one can pick up along the line, and a lot of patience, because like I said, this is not a kind of a a project sort of a thing where you start it and it ends. It could start but it could never end. It could if you're lucky, it starts and ends, and you're able to see the end of the deal or the transaction. But having the resilience and having the patience to be able to deal with your team members, your clients, your seniors, all of that really helps sort of you carry yourself forward and grow in the profession. Because like I said, you end up end up dealing with a lot of senior people from the other side, and to be able to sort of exhibit your skills, your understanding, and the need to learn and keep yourself updated is also, I would say, a very, very important skill that one should have. So one has to be a keen learner, because you have to keep sort of picking up trends, picking up whether it's global trends, domestic trends. I think a culmination of a lot of this. So like I said, professional skills are important, but some of these softer skills are even more important for you to grow in any profession, I would say. So I wouldn't really single out investment banking in that case. But like I said, the professional skills, of course, are peculiar and unique to investment banking, is where you will need to have some bit of financial acumen and business acumen to be able to understand businesses, understand growth, understand numbers, understand history of how the company has come to a certain level, how they have performed, what goes behind it. So all of this. I think that's really how I'll sort of sum it up.
Yes, Shunali, that was indeed the vital skills that you have highlighted upon: perseverance, communication, patience, and the professional skills. I'm sure all these skills will definitely take the students to the pinnacle of success in their investment banking career. Very nice. I think our moderator, Shumaisa, is back, and there are a lot of questions which are arising from the audience. I think she would be taking up and asking you a few questions from the audience as well. Shumaisa, over to you.
We have a very enthusiastic audience with us today who have been pouring us with a lot of questions for the speakers. We will try and take the best two from the chat box. So audience, we are waiting for your questions. We have quite a lot. So I'll read out one of the top two interesting questions for the day. So we've got one interesting one here. How can a student with a non-technical background pursue a career in fintech? Also, we want to know about finance jobs in Singapore. So this question is to you, Shyamasri ma'am, since you are working in Singapore and you have a wide experience, extensive experience in this field. Please take over, ma'am.
Thank you, Shamisha. Finance industry is, fintech industry is essentially financial services industry. It probably uses a little more technology to deliver services compared to regular banking industry. Let's remember that existing finance industry is also very heavily technology reliant, especially in areas of trading, for example, forex trading or stock trading, etc. It's completely technology led. So it's not as if the existing banking industry does not have technology. Therefore, the difference is primarily that the fintech has a more front-end user experience, which is technology-led. But fundamentally, it's not very different. End of the day, it's an industry which delivers financial services and not technology services. So it's not so much an issue of non-technical background. That can be an impediment to having a career in fintech, because essentially it's the same skills that you need in banking that you need in fintech industries as well, and which can be, especially for front office and middle office. Obviously, a certain amount of understanding of technology helps, But it's not as if you need to be so-called techie to be in the fintech industry. Of course, if you're developing products for the back office, essentially, I mean, if you're developing technology modules essentially for fintech industry, then obviously you need a technology background, you need an engineering background. But that's true even for regular banking. Even in any bank, the IT department is essentially filled with engineers in any case. So it's not very different in that sense. In terms of how can someone who doesn't have, let's say, a technology background pursue a career, I don't think it's very daunting. Again, as I said, I remember in Deutsche Bank, a lot of our traders on the trading floor actually have PhDs in physics and maths, and not really either MBAs or have engineers or anything of that sort. Because essentially, what they learned in physics or maths was basically building models which were required for trading, for example. Now, some examples that I can to students who are aspiring to be in this industry, you can actually take on courses which complement your existing education, your primary education. Let's say a law student can probably take a course in RegTech, which is regulatory technology, or cybersecurity. And that will help them get a job, let's say, in fintech industry, in compliance, or risk, basically risk management, etc. Or let's say an economics student can take on a course in, let's say, data sciences, for example, which helps them build models and basically do a lot of data analytics. Most fintechs actually deal with a lot of data analytics, data which comes in regularly and is easier to extract than from the traditional core banking systems which most large banks have, actually. So those are the things that people can look at. And as long as you do some, there are no specific, I mean, there are some fintech courses which are offered by global universities, etc. Personally, I don't think they really add so much of value. I have seen quite a few courses offered by IITs in India, for example, not necessarily fintech focused, but they do offer courses which are technical, and a lot of them can be used in the industry, data analytics, for example. A lot of the large technology companies actually have courses. Microsoft, for example, has a whole slew of courses, and in fact, they actually opened it up for free during the pandemic. And a lot of those courses, again, not specifically focused on fintech industry, but a lot of them would be very useful and very, very applicable for the fintech industry. So people can actually do those courses to gear themselves up if they want a career in fintech. And just make sure that it's an accredited university or it's a large company and your certification is valid and will be recognized by your potential employees. I think that's very important. And not go to any university which offers some course, essentially. So that's important. As far as jobs in Singapore is concerned, yeah, Singapore is a finance hub. It is a banking hub. It is also growing to be a fintech hub in the last few years. The government over here is very keen to make Singapore a big hub for fintech industry. And now there are jobs. It's not that there are no jobs, but in terms of if an Indian person is looking at moving to Singapore for a job, that's honestly, in the current scenario, is a little difficult. Like most governments, Singapore is also very keen on having their local talent getting jobs. And there is a lot of pressure on most corporates, including multinational banks and multinational corporations, to ensure that a certain percentage, or a pretty large percentage of the people employed in the regional offices are actually locals, which actually puts a lot of pressure for freshers, because what happens is that Singapore is a regional headquarters for a lot of companies, most companies actually. So what happens as you go up the ladder, beyond a point, you are too senior to be in your own country, essentially. So you move from India, or let's say Japan, or whatever. Japan probably is a different example, but you typically move out of Indonesia or Philippines or India and move to the regional office. So the senior management in most corporates across most industries, and especially banking, has a lot of foreigners, because not necessarily because they were in Singapore to begin with, but they typically moved up the career ladder, and eventually had to have a regional job, and therefore they moved into the regional office, which happens to be Singapore. And therefore, now as a proportion, because it's very top heavy with foreigners, the pressure on corporates to have locals, the junior level is higher because overall they will look at the number of Singaporeans or permanent residents in Singapore as a proportion of the overall number of employees. And therefore, it makes it very, even within the companies, it's become very difficult to move talent. But one thing that people can, if they're interested in looking at a job scenario outside India, what I can suggest is a lot of these banks as well as fintechs have offices, obviously, because Singapore itself is just a regional headquarters and a hub. It doesn't have a very large local market, so the markets are actually in the region, which is Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, etc. And there are opportunities there because there is a lack of talent in those countries. So people, if you're looking for a job outside India and you want to move to the Asia region, it's probably for a fresher or for somebody who's junior, it probably makes sense to look at these countries for a role. And that's probably a good pathway or segue into eventually landing up in Singapore if that's the goal, essentially.
Shumaisa, you are on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Shyamasri, for such wonderful insights into career opportunities. I'm very sure our audience are totally convinced. Yet another interesting questions we have here by our audience. Our next question is, uh, please share a few recent trends in finance in relation to job markets. So, Shunali ma'am, could you please throw some light on this?
Yeah, sure. There are a couple of increasing trends that we're seeing over the last few years, and I think this pandemic, those have got kind of accelerated. One would be, we all know that India is perceived as a manufacturing hub, but what we're seeing increasingly is that it's also being seen as a hub for services industry. So a lot of companies globally are actually moving their accounting and finance functions back to India. So they're actually, what we say is back officing these functions, which for the simple reason that, there's a huge talent pool available here, and it's also relatively at lower cost than what you see in other parts of the world. So that is across not only banks, but across financial services companies and across corporates, which is a very interesting trend, because that kind of throws up a whole lot of opportunities for people across levels, for graduates, for mid-level, for senior level. I think it's a great opportunity because we all, I mean, there's a huge talent pool sitting here within the country. Second, what is happening is that we are seeing a large number of funds that, one is domestic funds, and of course arms of the global funds who are present in India, investing in corporates. But what we're seeing is that now, they want to increasingly monitor their investments, which means that they want to kind of have people in their professionals on their team who can actually look and monitor at their investment, at their portfolio companies from time to time, which is sort of handhold them, because they could be companies at various stages. They could be early, sort of startup companies. They could be companies who are in the growth phase. There are companies who are in the sort of late stage of funding, or who are actually in a developed or a mature stage where they could be looking at listing. So funds have realized that that putting a team together which actually assists these portfolio companies and the teams there can add tremendous value to the existing company and their strategies and the way forward. So I'm seeing, of course, digibanking has opened up. Digibanking, fintech has opened up a plethora of opportunities as well. So increasingly, these are the 2-3 key trends that I'm seeing. Also, what's happening is that because of the way the economics is turning out globally, India is as an investment hub also. So there are a lot of global funds, investor community, which is looking, which is eyeing opportunities in India very closely. As a result of which the capital markets are opening up. And talk to my, talk to my counterparts in merchant banks. They all say that they're kind of ready. They're working on a number of listing documents, because in the next couple of months, we'll see a lot of companies getting listed and tapping the public markets. So I think these few things put together show that yes, there is an opportunity in every adversity. So that, so India is a growing economy, it is a developing economy, and there are a whole lot of opportunities being thrown up in this space.
Thanks, Shunali. I'm very sure our audience is very convinced with your answer. So those were the two questions. And yeah, thank you, panelists and audience. We could have kept this going, but as all good things come to an end, we would like to thank you, say a big thank you to our panelists for sharing invaluable industry insights with all the students who will be embarking their careers soon. Also, Aspire for Her has many mentors that students can anytime reach out to and get help. I believe everyone must make the best use out of this forum, where you have the best industry experts with us to help and guide you anytime, anywhere. Thank you once again.
Yeah, I thank everyone on behalf of VTU family.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Deepti.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
We had a great panelist on finance. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.